Welcome to Hip Replacement, the conversation between generations X, Y, and Z. I'm your host, Ben Dietz.
And I'm your host, Kyle Raymond Fitzpatrick. Every week we get together and talk with guests from Gen Z and beyond to try and understand just exactly what's going on in the current moment.
Because we're talking about these generations. All right, we're back, everybody. This is Hip Replacement episode number 12. I'm here with Kyle Raymond Fitzpatrick, as always, and we're also joined by Ben Ulansey, coming to us from the greater Philadelphia region. Kyle, tell me how we wound up here talking to Ben today.
Yes. So first off, I have to say, I think it's obvious, but this is our first Ben squared on the podcast. Two Bens. But Ben...
More matching pattern baseball caps for those watching
there we go.
Spotify.
A Ben trend, if you will. But Ben is a writer, and he runs the Gen Z Report on Substack, which is a great sort of like analysis of a lot of pop culture, but also a lot of politics too. And I think you do a really good job of sort of like diving deep on things and sort of sharing your point of view, but also like, you know, micro and macro at the same time. It's a good sort of intersection of things and intersection of a lot of different cultural items. So I reached out. Here we are. Have a chat. Welcome, Ben.
And Ben, you've been doing this since 2022. Is that right?
Yep, I started off in journalism in 2021, and it wasn't too long after that until I decided, it would be a lot more fun to write the things that I wanted to write. And I moved over to Medium, and a year or two after that, began on Substack as well.
Got
Nice.
it. Got
Quick
it.
after that.
I mean, get in where you fit in, right? And the timing suits. Well, we're talking right at the outset of summer. This is the 2nd of June that we're recording. This episode will come out on the 3rd of June. So one thing that I wanted to get into in my litany of Gen X complaints this week was the debate around the song of the summer. This is a perennial discussion, and one that Kyle, you sent some collateral in on. But the one thing that I wanted to just quickly point out was my rejoinder to your piece, which you should talk about in a second, but is John Caramonica's piece for New York Times Popcast, the Instagram live show that they have now, where John drives around in his car and listens to music. And he's got the G Banks and Z Wills, I might have messed up the artist names, sorry guys, but their song Get Jiggy, which he calls his song of the summer. First and foremost, guys, had you guys heard Get Jiggy prior to me sending it in the link?
No, and that was a lot of the reason why I didn't want to agree with this observation that it's the song of the summer. I'm like, this is my first time hearing it, so I'm not so sure they've got this one right.
That's fair. Well, it felt a bit like he was trying to really flex, like, look what I know, and it was like, good for you, right. Like, good.
Okay, well, so to John's credit, friend of the show, to John's credit, I came home last night, or not last night, sorry. I came home on Friday from a trip down south and got in an Uber, and it was on Hot 97. So here in New York, anyway, this song is being taken seriously and is being played in our biggest radio stations. But it's basically like it's what's called a club drill record. And John's point in the story is that it's kind of synthesizing the sound of hip house or club rap that I grew up on, circa the Jungle Brothers' "Girl, I'll House You" in 1988, and through the lens of the kind of Pop Smoke influenced Ice Spice influenced, contemporary drill scene, and that's obviously ignoring lots of other artists who are, pertinent to that scene. But it's just funny because to me, this song is just like really dumb, and I think John's point is that it's the fact that it's dumb, the fact that it's frothy is kind of the point. So Kyle, are we in a zone where just like froth is the mode?
I want to say yes, but I don't think that's true. I think that's sort of a misdirect, because like, look, if we want to think back to last summer, yes, there were many a quote unquote good contender for Song of the Summer. I think, and I stand by this, and I will go to bat for her is like, I think it was Espresso by Sabrina Carpenter. I think that
yeah,
was the
it was.
obvious.
Ran away
Absolutely.
with it.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
ran away. And like that to me is like sort of like what you're talking about. Like that's outside of sort of like the subject matter. Like it is super frothy and like funny and silly and ridiculous, but also like really smart and really catchy, hence why it was as successful as it was. Meanwhile, this is a bit, look, it does have some merit. Like it's a good tune. It seems like it's definitely a regional hit, obviously, and it will probably have a life as we know. But like it seems like it is a bit the silly is on a mood board, but I don't think it or we know where to place it. And I think a similar sort of thing is also happening with like say Benson Boone, and like that is a very like the Moonbeam Ice Cream Whatever song is like, I think people are also like, where do we place this? This is ridiculous and dumb, and I don't like it as a result of it. And I think that is sort of like, to me, and even talking about this now, like seems like what it is that it's like these things that are on a mood board sort of going around, not necessarily trying to be espresso, but like as incidentally because of the sort of silliness are in that world, but like they're not doing, like it's not hitting, because like I'm sorry, like you're not going to be able to match what happened last year. And I think we're just sort of in a deep hangover culturally, and like it hasn't emerged yet. Okay. And that I think is sort of really indicative of the, because like, again, not to get on my Sabrina horse, but like that song came out in like March of last year.
Sabrina horse.
Yeah.
And like it went all year. And like we have had nothing. And it's still going, yeah. But like if
never ended.
It really, to me, like it's sort of a symbol of sort of this, again, mass cultural paralysis since November, let's say, because like I don't think, people are trying to be force you to have fun, but it's like I'm not having fun that way. Have you seen The World?
I would agree. I feel like Sabrina Carpenter's was just an instance of the right place at the right time. Totally. And it's become a lot harder for songs to break out and achieve that Song of the Summer status. The last one before that I can distinctly call a successful Song of the Summer is Tame Impala's Lost in Yesterday. And I think that was a pre-pandemic one now. I think that there are certainly some people who would argue with me on this.
That's a cut, yeah.
I'm also a big Tame Impala fan, so that is one that sticks out in my head. But I think that the social media landscape has changed what's able to catch on in a really big way, and the way that we consume so much of our music now in these little sound bites. It's changed the industry in a colossal way.
Well, okay, so that brings up the point of this crooked media video that you guys, or that Kyle, that you sent, which was asking basically, why isn't this somebody's job? Or surely this must be somebody's job to have a Song of the Summer on deck, ready to go, queued up. And having spent some time in record labels, like I can tell you that on the one hand, that is definitely an imperative. On the other hand, it's alchemy.
Totally.
And figuring out what makes a hit work is a dark art, if not just pure luck. And I think to Ben's point, like, you know, the fragmentation of the media landscape makes it possible. In that video, they talk about how Party for You might be the Song of the Summer, this Charlie XCX record from 2020, from her subjectively best record, I will say. But also, I don't mean that song is the best song. I mean that record is the best record. So it is sort of funny. Like we another example of how we live in time out of timeline in a certain respect.
Well, it's like, I think, like, I was going to bring that up, is that like that to me is, I think, one of the more alarming things is that like, not only is it a song from 2020, that's fine. Like that I really don't care as much about, but like we literally just did this last summer. And like, to me, there is this sort of like, you know, desperate boyfriend just sort of like texting you and being like, hey, like, let's do 2024 again. Let's do Brad Summer again. Like, please, like, come, let's do this. And it's like, no, like things have changed. And like, I think part of why the Charlie thing is working and whatever is because people do have a nostalgia for last summer, which again is like kind of horrifying, but also it is what it is. But like, I think that to me is such a like, y'all need to get out of the house, get off of TikTok, please. Go do something.
So here's a question for me, and Ben, I love your take on this as the Gen Z representative. So one of the things that I've been hearing a lot, partially it's the, Morgan Wall and Uber Alles, partially it's, MAGA Nation, I think. Partially it's just a sort of response to the artificiality, I think, of social media and electronically generated sounds. But there's a lot of roots Americana, country fried kind of stuff coming in. I'm thinking of Wednesday's Elderberry Wine, which has been hitting on, like, let's call it the indie channels lately. I'm thinking of MJ Lenderman. Obviously Waxahachie had a great year last year. And there are lots of other country artists that I'm not exposed to, but I wonder, here's what I wonder. When I listen to those records in the car with my kids who are 18 and 16, I don't get much response from them. And it feels strange to me that this, like, roots Americana music, which is very old coded as far as I'm concerned. I enjoy it, but it's very old coded to me. Would be popping the way that it is. What do the kids think about that?
I heard this statistic a while back that country music had completely overtaken the music industry. I
Yeah,
forget what precisely the
I can see
figure was,
it.
but something like over 50-60% of what people are streaming these days is apparently country music. And it confuses me because it's so out of line with my own experience. I
Hmm.
don't see a lot of people listening to this. I don't have a lot of my friends who are going to these concerts. It kind of just it feels almost manufactured in a way, like it's this story that
Hmm.
people are inventing, and I don't know where the people are who are listening to this music.
Totally.
They must be out there, but I have yet to meet many of them.
Yeah, I mean, having spent time recently in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, uh, Burlington, North Carolina, Louisville, Kentucky, I, I I know who theoretically is listening to it, but even so, in those places, I didn't really hear too much of it. Like I saw the I saw the people that you sort of imagine from popular portrayal as being the fans of that music, and I don't hear it. And instead, it's like I get it on Sirius XMU, which is about as
Yeah.
Williamsburg coded as you could imagine.
Well, so here's a really I mean, I think to the point of like who is listening to it, clearly people are. Like, I think like the Morgan Wallen thing is a really good example. I've never heard a Morgan Wallen song. I hope to never have
No,
to.
surely.
Yeah,
Maybe I have.
if
You've
I walked past him on
definitely
the
heard.
street, I
am
would not know.
Yeah, I know what he
Come
looks
on.
like. I know about the drama. I don't think I've heard a song. Maybe I have and I don't know, and that's fine.
That's
To
where I
Morgan,
stand.
to his credit, that I Had Some Help, the song from last year with Post Malone, is a smash. It is. I mean, it's undeniable.
To that point is
Crunch.
that like I'm looking at the Hot 100 and 5 of the 10 right now are Morgan Wallen songs. And in the top 20, that Post Malone song is there, and there are a few other ones as well. You'll also find the Shabuzi song from last year and Die With a Smile is also in the top 10 as well, which I think, again, this is that to me, that all of this says a lot about like really sort of like upside down moment right now. Like that
Yeah.
is.
It does feel that way.
Oh, I wonder. I mean, what I wonder about. I mean, obviously the album charts are determined in large extent by streaming numbers, right? AKA
Yeah.
Spotify streams, and what it feels like for an artist like Morgan Wallen to have that many songs in the top 10, top 100, whatever, it means that people are listening to the album all the way through. And I wonder if
Totally.
this is representative of bifurcated listening behavior, right? One is where we play albums of a certain type, we play playlists of another type, and then we just get the frothy stuff, the get jiggy with it, or even espresso, through quick hit social media snippets and sounds. But so that all makes sense to me logically speaking, but I don't know, I don't see the behavior actually happening. So I'm just wondering, like,
Yeah.
Ben, if you notice that from your audience or from your peers.
Something that these charts can't take into account is just how much time on social media people spend listening to the same
Yeah.
few seconds of the song Makaba over and over, or I'm this and I'm blanking on some of them now, but there are 10 or 15 songs that are just catered to very specific things. And if this is the Dark and Creepin' video dark and creepy video, here's the dark and creepy sound. This is the
Yeah, for
happy
sure.
fun video,
Hmm.
here's the happy fun sound.
Right.
And it's just so unbelievably repetitive. And that really is what most people are like
Yeah.
consuming these days. And I think that the fact that Morgan Wallen is able to dominate the charts says to me that the Song of the Summer era really may just be dead at this point.
Hey, I don't know
Well,
if that's true, but like I do think that like Morgan Wallen is a particular type of, say, like Americana ancient evil that we're seeing rise again. Like obviously with, say, like it's unsurprising that we see that happening amidst, like, like Trump, etc. stuff. But like the other thing too, and I remember reading this in the I think the Pitchfork review of the album, is that like I just looked it up on iTunes, and like the album that these songs are coming off of, there are 37 songs on the album and it is 2 hours long.
yeah, for
Like,
sure.
so it's like it's an exercise in indulgence, obviously, but it's also sort of like, I'm gonna throw everything at you, and like something's gonna stick. And
Well,
Yeah.
so I had a funny experience last night. My son Campbell, series producer Campbell, and I were driving back home last night, and it was late at night, and I was trying to stay awake, and we heard an Andrew WK song come on to Sirius XM, and I was just like, oh my God, Campbell, I'm going to make you listen to I Get Wet, the first
Oh
Andrew
my
WK
God.
record. And we listened to it front to back, which is, I don't know, 34 minutes or something like that.
Yeah.
It's very short. That album is an experience. But in any case, um, when it ended, it didn't stop. It just bled right into another Andrew WK song, which sounds from the second record, which sounds very much like all of the stuff from the first. And I was struck by this. I was just like, maybe this is why artists are well, it's one reason why they're being encouraged to be indulgent, because Spotify will just give you the whole artist catalog if you don't stop it. So it's like, well, what difference does it make? Let's just like stack this album and go. I agree with you though,
Right.
Kyle. It's indulgent, and it makes me yearn for the days of Andrew WK.
Right. I mean, it just
It
it
reminds
seems
me of
like
the
a
way that
production.
it reminds me a bit of the way that so many reels now and shorts rope you into watching the same video twice. Like they
Yeah.
end with a hook that leads back into the same video, and it's like, what the hell is the point of this? I just watched this video.
I mean, you got to get those
Yeah,
engagement numbers up, right?
Totally.
yeah.
Like, just get the view numbers up. All right. Well, look, enough about the song of the summer. Unless you guys want to keep going on this, I think we can move on,
No.
because the other thing that it made me want to ask you guys in particular were these two paired articles. One was from New York Mag, Vulture, whichever one of their entertainment brands it is, about workplace etiquette and the need to return to workplace etiquette. And then the second one was an interview in the Wall Street Journal with a guy from English Manners, who is an etiquette expert who's being hired to teach etiquette to Gen Z essentially in the workplace, because
I was amused by that.
I mean, because it turns out that Gen Z eats their peas with a knife or something. It was, anyway, I just thought those two were really funny, and I'm curious, do the kids not know how to act?
Ben, would
I
you
would
like to speak for speak for the generation first before I share thoughts?
So the pandemic definitely did make it hard for a lot of us to communicate in the world and be normal functioning people. And it's kind of funny how there was this like de-socialization element where we all go through up our lives and are pretty well socially connected and have friends and whatnot. And then a couple years of lockdown go by and we go back into the world and it's like, am I awkward now?
Right. Right.
And so I think that's a large part of it.
I think also, like, and this is something that I really love and respect about Gen Z, but by the other token or the other side, like someone could say like, well, that's why they're boomers. But like, I appreciate that, like, there's a sort of like, I don't care. I am like just gonna do this. You want me to put my coffee on a coaster? I don't care. Sorry. Like,
Yeah.
there's a sort of like a nonchalance, like, who gives a shit? And like that I really appreciate. I do think the whole like they have no manners is like a whole like, that's a sort of big office propaganda just to get you to go back to the office and whatever. And like, look, yes, people may be noisy and people may eat things that you don't want to be subjected to, but like that's also like communal living and like get over it. So like it's a sort of like slippery slope of like, well, when I was in the office, like I was allowed to do X, Y, Z, and this is how it was. And like sure, but also like at that point you weren't allowed to like you were jailed in an office from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Like that's also bad. So like I am of the opinion that like, we need a bit of sort of like a breaking down of what sort of like office culture could and should be. And on the flip side, I think which these stories don't touch on, and maybe the etiquette guy, yes, is to this, but like to me, the sort of thing that is missing in all of this, and I like to think that I was doing this when I was managing Gen Z workers, writers, whatever, is that like mentoring them and being like, hey, like you wore a tank top to the office, and this is why you shouldn't. And like that is like that's very different than like getting HR called or having a sort of etiquette teacher come and be like, well, dumbass, like you're doing that. And like, so I think it's a sort of like, it's a very like parent not talking to your kid thing. Mm-hmm. And to me, it's just like, you guys need to like talk. You can learn from each other.
Well, I agree with what you were saying about how I kind of admire the way that Gen Z hasn't really given into this whole paradigm. Like we've spent so long erecting this standard where people need to be miserable working and they need to sit in a stiff chair for 8 hours of the day and plug away at their work. And it doesn't need to be that way. The paradigm is able to shift.
But hold on a second. That's a slippery slope, because pretty soon you're going to be telling me that you need to be able to eat your peas with a knife, Ben, which is just, as the corporate manager in that Wall Street Journal story said, insanity.
My boomer dad eats his pizza with a fork and knife. He's the one who needs coaching.
Fair enough. Shout out Bill de Blasio. I did think that was interesting, because it's part of what we have lost over in video age, in remote work life, is the sense of how spatial dynamics, nonverbal cues, styles of dress, ways of sitting, posture, all of that stuff affects and has a real impact on the value of an interaction in the workplace. And I don't think we need, Emily Post to be resurrected and have people come around and, know which fork to use. But by the same token, I think it is, in a world where everything is slapdash, instantly created, sort of tossed off, it's like, it's easy to forget.
Yeah.
These gestures have real power, and that power has real impact.
Yeah.
Kyle was raising his hand here. Classic example.
Being very polite, but like to the point of like all of this, like I feel like it's a really, like this is a sort of like beautiful cloth bandage on like a bigger issue of just like, yes, pandemic is obviously part of this, et cetera, obviously. But I think another part of it is that like, the systems of work and the systems of sort of like the economy, et cetera, are not working as they should, and they are breaking down, and there are a lot of issues. Like, why is this person going to care so much about this job? It doesn't pay them shit, and you treat them like shit. Like, it's sort of a reflection of larger ennuis and frustrations that I don't think are being addressed. Like, it's like, yes, you can invest in, getting your staff to have better manners, but also like, you should also make sure that like they are taken care of, et cetera, et cetera. But on top of that, it's like they don't have, or not, I'm not talking specifically about Gen Z, this is a lot of workers in general, like don't have the sort of drive or will to do a lot of things because like it's not worth it. Like it is so sort of like broken down and rigged and tough. Like people can't even get a new job if they want that. So they're sort of locked in the prison of whatever job they're in. And it's like, that is sort of like what they're all going together. And it's like, I think the etiquette conversation, like the people aren't vibing at the office, is like a misdirect for like, there's a larger economic conversation that this is responding to that like we're not addressing.
I think that so many of our issues as society stem from the fact that we have trouble looking at issues from a we're trapped in a binary perspective. People either
Yeah,
see
Yeah,
that
things
too.
as all
100%.
the way right or all the way wrong. And
Totally.
there's certainly some sense in the idea that yeah, we don't need to be trapped for 9 hours a day in stiff chairs, uncomfortable. But yeah, maybe we shouldn't all be in beanbags working outside just
Absolutely
because
not.
some liberal arts college study said that it would help.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
Wait,
Okay, so and I guess that's it. It's like, maybe I wonder if maybe what we're in the midst of at the moment is a sort of a redrawing of the lines around, or a closing of the Overton window in terms of what's acceptable, and
hmm
that it's not to say that we return to a more conservative viewpoint, although that's definitely one way to frame it, but almost more just like we need to trim the fringes a little bit, because if we don't, the whole coalition is too ragged and not,
Yeah,
there isn't cohesion enough. And it's the easy places to cut are around, or to trim rather, are around, superfluous, sort of dumb details. But by the same token, I think there's some empirical logic to it. Like, this Chris Black article in GQ about how the mullet is staging another comeback and we don't have to accept it. Like, another friend of the show, Chris is known for his takes, but I think he's right about this. Like, the mullet's an
yeah, yeah.
objectively bad haircut. Like, let's get rid of it. Like, let's not have it anymore. We
So
don't need it. We don't
that
have powdered wigs anymore. Why do we
It's
totally.
have mullets?
objective truth.
But I think like okay, so the mullet thing is a really fascinating thing. I've written about this before. I've been thinking about that a lot, but like less the mullet itself, but I think something that is, and he sort of touches on this, but I think something that's sort of missing. The mullet is a really good example of just how like of how a lot of things have sort of reached a dead end as far as like creativity, let's say.
Sure.
And like I wrote about this like last year around this time, is like I've had so much trouble trying to get an interesting haircut because there hasn't been a new sort of like interesting style presented. Everything is a variation of a mullet. Everything is sort of like something that not necessarily has been done and is retro coming back, but just like it's not interesting or new or like trying to challenge something. And to me, like color aside, like I always try to seek a style that like is unique for me and like gets me thinking in a different way and looking a different way, obviously. But like that, having that sort of issue last year where I was talking to my like hair person and like neither of us could figure out like a new hairstyle, and he's like, there's nothing out there. And I was like, that is a problem. Like look, hair's always being reinvented. Like what? Stop. But I think again, like that goes to the Song of the Summer. It goes to like all the movies being reboots and whatever. Like they're all related to me. Like it's just like I don't know what the answer is. Probably it's just talking to people more in person. We should all be doing, but like to
I've
me
had
they're all
this
related.
I've had this running theory for a while, and I don't know if there's any truth to it, but I feel that ever since the pandemic, people have just been more and more nostalgic and way less willing to innovate and look into the future for new trends and much more. I think the past was onto something good.
Well,
So,
it's
like,
just, I mean, so sorry to cut you off, Ben. But I mean, that's comfort seeking behavior, right? It's
Yeah,
yeah,
that's
true,
that's
true.
ultimately what nostalgia is, right? It's like we feel insecure, and so we seek comfort in the familiar, which is it's understandable emotionally, but it's
hmm
also it's sad, It's
Well,
like,
it's like I think that's sort of what we're dealing with. Is like I think people are seeking that sort of like these so many different things for comfort because so many things are not great, et cetera, et cetera. But now they're just like not working. It's like they don't work anymore because they've been so exhausted. And because this is what, year 5 of applying that same formula, it's like, of course it's going to be exhausted. You have to look at the shit and fix it. Or try it again to fucking get into whatever the fuck new Jurassic Park movies coming out. Like, no,
okay, well,
no, like,
that's okay. So that actually provides us
hmm,
a really like a salient pivot point to the article that Ben sent about VO3. Right, this is not voiceover 3. This is VEO 3. The Google video generation software. This is an article in The Verge, I think. Ben, tell us about that one. What was it? What was it struck you there, please?
I think what's been really interesting for me with the world of generative AI is watching how there's a discrepancy in the way that certain parts of the field are advancing. I think that text generation, I've been comparatively surprised by how not far it's jumped in the years since it's been unveiled. I feel as though
Interesting.
what would happen when I prompted ChatGPT to write an essay in this style 3 years ago isn't terribly different from what happens today.
That's a great take.
So there's so much of the same formulaic stuff. It's using so many of the same buzzwords, and it just lacks humanity. Whereas I've been very surprised by just how far image and video generation have come along. And I think this VO3 case is the single scariest that I've seen yet. Like these videos that you can generate with a single sentence prompt are indiscernible from reality in so many cases, and it's about to change the world.
Well, okay, so talk about that a little bit because you just made a really important switch, which was essentially you went from interesting to scary in the course of a sentence. I agree with you 100% that it's interesting. I agree somewhat that the uses are potentially scary in terms of disinformation and so on and so forth, but I don't necessarily agree. I don't full stop. I don't agree that it's scary from an existential standpoint. And so I'm wondering which scary you're qualifying it as.
Yeah, I'd be curious to hear how you don't find it to be existentially terrifying. For me, for me, I think that reality is about to what we objectively view as reality is about to change. There's it 3 weeks ago, I would see an AI video on Facebook, and all of the comments were, "Oh my God, this is so obviously AI generated. How are you guys not seeing this?" And now I'm seeing, just a few weeks later, I'm seeing these Google VO3 videos, and I'm looking for those same comments, and people are just completely snowed by it. They don't realize that it's AI, and that's scary. People are going to
The
start sharing more and more things that they think are real that have not
Yeah.
actually happened in real life.
We already saw proof of one of them, which I don't know if it was a VO one, but it was the kangaroo trying to get on a flight. That fooled so many people across
What?
generations. There was a
Yeah.
viral
Ugh.
video of like these two people, and it sounds like they're talking in French, but like the more you listen to it, it's a nonsense language. I could be wrong, but like it's just nonsense. And
Mm-hmm.
they're like, it's like a airline steward and like someone trying to get in a flight, and this person has like a boarding pass and it's just like, I need to get on this plane, or gesticulating in Simlish saying that. And there's a kangaroo between them who is also holding a boarding pass. And so the whole thing is that like this is a sort of like comfort animal that they're not letting on the plane.
I
And
see.
like
Okay.
that took off. Like people thought it was real. And the
Okay.
first time I didn't actually watch it, I was just like, oh yeah, sure. Like I can see that being a real story. I'm not going to watch it. But then I saw the conversation about like, this is AI. Like people, y'all
Okay.
got
Got
Yeah.
it.
duped. And so that is
Comfort.
like,
Comfort. Comfort kangaroo is that's a good hook.
it's a good hook. But it's like, yeah, like I think, to me, I think like the disinformation is scary. And I do think, and I've heard similar arguments to what you were saying, Ben, about like, this sort of like questioning of reality and sort of like, that is true. To me, and then I want to, Ben, obviously you hear your thoughts on this, is like, I don't think it's as existentially scary. I'm sort of in the middle, but I do think it's going to then make anything that you see online is not real. And so then
Right.
all of the internet
Right.
is going to then become like a useless thing
That
unless
right.
you
I
already
now
have a
see
Sherpa.
videos and now I see videos that are real, and people are like, "Oh my God, this is obviously AI," and the exact opposite is happening at the same time. It's
Yeah,
just, it is a
The,
weird time
the,
to
yeah.
try to
that
determine truth these days. Ugh.
yeah that well look, I think that's, I mean, and that to me is why it's not existentially scary, right? Essentially those two things, right? One, the AI as a machine for more, as I typically characterize it, like its destiny is to create more
Hmm.
junk essentially. And at a certain point, I think people just start to become overwhelmed, right? We literally, our brains fill up to the top, and then you have to turn off and you have to go do something else. So I feel like there's a, Ben, you talked about the binary earlier. There's an on off switch that we haven't yet tripped, but that we're getting closer to. And I think that's,
Totally.
I think that's one real response. The other reason is that I think that at the end of the day, like these, the stuff that can be generated here is um is not fundamentally original. It's all based around memes, around past data, around so on and so forth. And at a certain point, it's just like and I hear you, but there's a life to it that is still missing, and I don't know that the life.
Have you seen some of the
happened.
videos from Google VO3 yet? For
I have.
particularly the ones where it's like people protesting about "we are not prompts," and
Oh yeah.
man, those ones
Though
are
I have not seen that one. No.
especially eerie because it's I don't know if I could properly summarize those, but it's essentially these just very realized people just talking about the fact that some people are trying to say that we were just generated by single sentence prompts, but that's ridiculous. And they
I see.
each
Okay.
were, and they each feel like they have humanity to them. And you have to really put on your magnifying glass to see the issues
To
there. But
discern.
yeah,
I mean, look, I definitely don't want to be proven wrong in this case, but I'm willing to acknowledge that I might be. Um, yeah,
I'd love
I
to
don't
be
know.
wrong myself. I would
Yeah,
love to be wrong.
I just feel like there have been. I mean, I'm old enough that there are enough. I've been through a number of these sort of technological panics that turn out to be essentially just incremental improvements on utility or experience or whatever the case is. And I guess
Yeah.
that's the reason I'm bearish in particular.
I can agree with that. I'm like exactly in the middle between you both on this. Like I think like I to the point of what you're saying earlier, Ben Dietz, is that like I think like the biggest thing is like this is just like it's a mirror. Like it's not innovation. It's just a giant mirror in a hall of already too many mirrors, and like it will make things confusing and it will make things whatever. Like ultimately it's
I
just gonna
think
force people offline, which is like that's not a bad thing. And like
I think the Hall of Mirrors thing is a really important metaphor.
yeah, and
Kyle,
like
just
that's exactly
I
what
look forward
is
to the trend report piece on it.
hey, hey.
It feels like for me the mirror analogy feels like it applies much more cohesively to text generation, where it's just
Okay.
these they're compiling their databases on more and more of AI generated content to the point where it's
Yeah,
just
yeah. But
more
I
and more
think
formulaic over time.
that's
Whereas
exactly
the
where it is becoming a merit to the point of like if they can't even get language and the use of language to innovate, they're not going to innovate as far as the video. Like yes,
Well,
it
hold
can
on.
mirror, but it's
Yeah, Ben,
not
I want
going
you to.
to like introduce any new idea as far as like what video is and what the content is.
Yeah, but
Subject
Ben,
wise, like again, like based on a prompt, like that's a from a prompt. So it's like that's not it didn't come up with it. It like is parroting.
but finish that thought, Ben, because you were I think you were going someplace a
I
little
think
different
that
there.
because of the way that it draws information, I think that video and image generation just have a higher ceiling. There's so much
Yeah.
video and information to draw from, and it seems like it's able to make more useful sense of the patterns to the point where it's advancing far more quickly. But I don't disagree with what you're saying about how if things continue to advance much further beyond this point, people are just going to be driven mad by it. I
Yeah.
sometimes feel that if that tipping point exists, that how have we not passed it already? I think that
Well,
there's
true.
a strong chance that we might all be so addicted to these devices that we are along for the ride and we're going to continue watching every device, every platform continue in shitifying and just settle with it.
Well, I
But
mean, look, it's certainly in the realm of possibility, and everything from we're living in a simulation to the Matrix to whatever weird ketamine inspired trip
No.
Elon is on.
Mm-mm.
It's certainly, I guess it's certainly possible, but it also I'm that's where it gets existential to me, and I don't it doesn't feel to me like we're anywhere
Right.
near it.
I think we are in this sort of tipping point. Like it's not tipping yet, but I think like to your point, Ben, like I think that is like a really good like, we haven't hit a tipping point yet, but I think that we are starting to enter a moment where like a tipping point may happen. Like it's not going to be huge. It's same with like, for a terrible, awful, but some real example is like some things like fascism and like extreme conservatism. It doesn't switch overnight. It's a slow creep that takes years and years. And like that has sort of been happening for the past like let's say 15 17 years with social media, and we're getting to a point that like AI is going to then exacerbate it. And we're already seeing it with like, this year, and again, politics have sort of helped happen or forced us to happen, is like social media numbers are really down. People don't want to be online. They're tired of it. They're mad at it. They understand the sort of oligarchy problems, et cetera, et cetera. And like a lot of like brands are seeing their numbers go down. And like the point of the Target boycotts, like all these sorts of things, like, yes, they're not as a capital M meaningful as they could or should be. But like, I think that sort of to me, I'm taking that, and I'm a glass half full person, or like just half full, just a little bit half full, is that like it speaks to like some things are happening that weren't happening before, as far as like people being like, no. And like that says something. And like hopefully that will continue. We'll see. Because like AI doesn't have to work if we don't use it.
There's an analogy that I continually return to in thinking about our place as a species. I feel like we're sprinting up this mountain of innovation, and we can't even see what's ahead. We don't know where the cliff ends, and we are just darting up it faster and faster. And there will be a point where we just fall off the edge.
Yeah.
And I don't know how close to that edge we are, and it's exciting to keep looking out at the world through these higher and higher peaks. And most of my life, I don't wish that I'd grown up without the internet. I lament the role that it's played in my life, but it's very
Interesting.
exciting to have these incredible technologies in my life that throughout most of human existence they could have just never even begin to
Yeah.
conceive of.
That's it. That's I mean, that's actually really kind of fascinating, Ben, because and it gets to the heart of what we try to get into in the show a little bit, is just like the notion of these not generational like attitudes or behaviors, but even just the frames of reference and the context, right? Like I've said to people a number of times recently, like for my parents' generation was the first that had dogs that lived in the house, right?
That's amazing. I never thought about that.
I mean, really, like it is like
Wow.
within the human lifespan of a lot of people who are alive, dogs lived outside. And now dogs sleep with us. But so, or ultimately they get turned into anthropomorphized fashion models and they become Instagram stars or whatever the story is. Like the constant shift of the Overton window of culture and references is what is fascinating. The thing that I think is interesting about what you just said, though, is that you lament, which is the word you use, you lament the role that the internet has had in your life, which I find sort of, I don't know. I mean, for me to think about that, that would be like me saying I lament the role that the automobile has had in my life, or the fossil fuels, or something like that. Something that was elemental to my experience, but that has deleterious consequences, right? Essentially.
I have such polarized feelings about this. I think that I'm more in awe of technology than most of the people in my life, and it truly never stops being incredible to me that we have the entire reservoir of human knowledge just floating through the air around us, and we can each just draw from it almost anywhere in the world. And I think that most people I know don't really spend their days in awe of that fact. And for me,
Totally.
it never quite dissipates. But the reverse side of that coin is that I am so hopelessly addicted to my cell phone that there are times where I will thoughtlessly update my notifications twice within a single minute without really even being aware that I've done it. It's just
Yeah.
so compulsively a part of me that I know it's hurting my brain, and I know
Yeah.
it's hurting my short-term memory, and it really is a double-edged sword.
All right. Well, I mean, that, I hate to say that feels like a good moment to close on, but I mean, I
I
don't
think
know.
that
There's
says
much
it
more to
all,
say about it
really.
than that, Ben. Except
Yeah.
that, I guess from my experience, you you you'll be fine. I have a sense that you'll be fine. Like
Appreciate
ultimately,
that.
and it's the hope that I have for my kids. It's the hope that I have for just the future. Generally speaking, I think people figure out a way to get through these crazy, and to even call it a crisis but these sort of contentious
Yeah. I agree with
periods.
that.
I think that a lot of times people fall into the thinking that this is a bad decade, and there's just so much chaos in the world that And we do have a tendency to always look toward the negative as it arises, that it's hard to consider the fact that, maybe the story that the 2020s or the 2000s will ultimately tell is one of incredible growth, and all of this regression right now is just a speed bump. But yeah, I think that we do have a hard time assessing the overall trend of our species sometimes.
Yeah,
And
that's fair.
even with all the negative going on in the world, I'm far from pessimistic. There's a
It,
lot that I'm looking
yeah,
forward to.
yeah. I feel like it's really hard to be. This is gonna sound weird, but I feel like it's really hard to be grateful in a lot of ways because like you don't have a lot of time to stop and be like, wow,
Mm,
like I can
yeah,
be in continental Europe talking to people in a different country and like having survived many a health thing that would have killed me 50 years ago or 100 years ago. Like
yeah,
Yeah,
that's like
to yeah, to me that
brilliant.
feels like the bigger story than all of the regression that
Yeah,
we've seen during the Trump
totally.
administration. The fact that we can have these conversations at all is so astoundingly remarkable that,
Absolutely.
yeah, it's
yeah. Well, I mean, Ben, point well made, and one of a bunch of fascinating stuff we've gotten to. As we bring the episode to the close here, thank you for joining us. Where can the kids and the old people like myself find you?
I write on Medium and Substack, and
And
my
and
publication is called the Gen Z Report
got it.
on
Okay,
Substack.
cool.
That
So
is.
we look for the Gen Z report on Substack, and then anything else on Medium.
Ben Ulansey is just the name I go by on Medium.
Got it. Cool. Well, guys, check out Ben's both Substack and Medium output. Fascinating, and as you can tell from the conversation, really well considered, and you know, hopefully not prescient, if I may, but the
We'll see.
but well considered in any case. You have been listening to Hip Replacement. This is episode number 12, and we are back every Monday or every Tuesday, I should say, with a new episode. So come back and see us next week. Follow us wherever you are getting this on YouTube or on your podcast platforms. And Ben, would love to have you come back and check in, especially as the march of progress continues.
I would love to come back, and thank you so much for having me on.
You bet.
Coming.
All right, guys. Well, till next week, Kyle, great to see you.
Great to see you too. We'll see you next week.